Hello everyone, I hope everyone is well. I am doing something a little bit different for this video. I have been itching to alter a playing card for some time. I finally had the time and the opportunity to do it. So I'll be showing you the process of my first experiment today. The first thing that I did was applied a layer of gesso. Now, as you know, there is a shiny layer on a playing card. I did deliberate over trying to peel that away or prepping the card by sanding it back. I didn't do either of those things. As I say, it is just an experiment, or was just an experiment. So I went straight in and applied the gesso to the playing card, which seemed to work out well. However, the next time I try this technique, I will do either of those two things and either remove the layer of plastic if possible or sand it back and see if I get a different result. I ended up applying several layers of gesso. I think in the end it was 2 or 3, and dried in between with my heat tool. I was very conscious to avoid the jack and the heart in either corner, so I just worked around those. Actually, with 1 or 2 layers, I can't quite recall, but I did go over the jack and the heart, but I ensured that I didn't go over it enough that it was no longer visible. I gave them less paint than I did the rest of the playing card. So the main colour for the playing card, the background colour, was chipped sapphire. I'll be working with that and a paintbrush, so I smooshed it onto my messy mat and I added some water, and I simply picked the ink up with the playing card face down, and again applying all over the card but trying to avoid the jack of hearts in either of the corners. It was impossible to completely avoid both of those jack of hearts there, so where the ink did go onto those areas, I simply just wiped the ink away with my fingers. There we go, you can see me doing that there. Now here I decided it was time to clear up, and then realised halfway through that I would need more of that ink, that it wasn't quite blue, or as blue as I'd have liked, as dark as I'd have liked. So I cleaned up part of that, went in and dried my playing card, and then came back to it. The ink had pooled in some areas, so I simply went in and removed some of that ink with some kitchen roll. Now, where I was presumptuous before and cleared up the ink, I went back in and smooshed more of that chipped sapphire down on my messy mat and repeated the process now that the first layer of ink was dry. Again, repeating the same process as before, trying to avoid those jack of hearts, but wiping away where that was inevitably going to happen. I just kept going in and repeating the process until I was happy with the coverage and satisfied that the jack of hearts was still visible. I did find at this stage that the ink just kept picking up in the same areas and not all the areas of the playing card. So I moved the ink around on the card with my finger so that it was more evenly dispersed over the playing card. Now, I did go in and between each layer I heat set the ink with my heat tool, but it did start to bubble, so do bear in mind that we are working with something which contains a plastic, so try not to keep your heat tool on a particular area for too long so as to avoid this happening. For this alteration, I used Into the Woods stamps from Visible Image, and the tree in the centre there became the main focus on the playing card. The tree on its own was just perfect for this alteration, as the body and the branches hugged the symbols beautifully. I used my VersaFine Onyx Black to stamp up the image. And the moment of truth, perfect. Next, I went in and stamped one of the birds from the set in the top right hand corner. In hindsight, I wouldn't have done this. Where I wasn't able to get the whole bird onto the card, it just looks more like an inky mark, but that's okay. Now here, I spent an awfully long time trying to decide which words from the set I was going to use, so I'm going to fast forward this part. Finally decided, I went for Stay True, and I inked those up again as before with the tree using my VersaFine Onyx Black. Now, I decided it was unfinished at this stage and needed something else, so I went around the edges with some black soot distress oxide. The true was a little blurry, it wasn't quite as sharp as the stay, so I went in with a fine liner and just went over some of those lines and some of the letters. Now, it did pick up some of the ink, it peeled it off, so I had to be very careful, to be very gentle to whilst I was going over these areas. But it works in the end, just with some patience and some TLC. I decided then to do the S in Stay also. Stay tuned for the finished result.